Hello, colleagues and friends. Vladimir, CTO at nowtec Solutions here. Today, I would love to speak about the different approaches in training LLMs, large language models, current version of AI, also known as generative AI, Gen AI, and concretely about RAG, Retrieval-Augmented Generation, and fine-tuning the models itself. There are, in principle, two approaches. In both approaches, you will be taking the data, doing some operations, and then making use of it. But these approaches, RAG and fine-tuning, differ in complexity. In the RAG approach, the way it works, it's you have your own documents, data set. Let's call any piece of data a document for simplicity. It can be a PDF, a Word document, a text note, or web page, anything, any information that you store. Structured data, semi-structured data, doesn't matter. In a RAG approach, you take these documents, you embed them, and then they are stored as vectors. And the way to get the vectors, it also comes from an already existing LLM, a self-hosted one, or Llama, or a generic one commercially available, OpenAI, Cloudy, Anthropic, and many other. The approach here is that you have a question. Say the user then comes when you establish such a system of RAG with your domain-specific knowledge. Then wherever you get a prompt or questions, imagine it's a chat, then it goes, retrieves very close similar vectors, and then it mixes it up with the prompt and sends all this back of the say of the questions and your knowledge to LLM. And if the prompt is good, you get a meaningful answer that is based on the knowledge from your organizations. So it doesn't matter if you host it with the we do in the private LM, it's our setup. You can have multiple models from Llama here. Can be any of the models. Some are more instruction specific, some are embedding specifics, and of course you've probably heard all about many of these. In this term, you use the model, and the max you can do is use embeddings. Sentence transformer, you can also use a different provider to create embeddings for you. And then every time you chat with your model, you interact with this embedded knowledge already. For example, currently we're having, say, our own documentation portal is quite structured. It has it's basically the markup, which is very well embedded into the very well used for RAG, and then very well embedded. We are taking all these documents and embedding them on this scheme, and then we mix it with prompt, and then use of any LLM and get domain organization specific knowledge right away in a smart way. The advantage is that this approach is reproducible, relatively fast to implement, and you can that you embed in other use cases, and then you don't have to do heavy lifting. You don't have to go and modify the LLM. And yes, the uptraining is different. Another approach to make use of the LLM is fine-tuning. Organizations of domain-specific data set. Again, it can be any document, just we mentioned. And then you don't embed, you just take the open weights model, and it's also one of the popular Llama 3.1, Llama 3.3. So you take one of the open weights models, and then you, instead of, again, you can also fork it from Hugging Face or from Llama, and then you feed in your data. You also have do a bit of embedding down there. You feed in your data, you fine-tune it, and you get the fine-tuned LLM specific for your for your data. And then the user interacts with the, say, instead of interacting with the OLAMA 3.1 8b, it interacts with, Llama 3.1.b 8b by by, I don't know, by any person, any organization that fine-tuned that. And then eventually you have, say, you existing pre-trained model, add new data, you train it, the parameters get updated, and you have a fork of your model. And then it can be one of these popular ones. And then you get to evaluate, then you need experts to see how well it performs. So there is no way, there is not a good way to check it analytically. Well, analytically, probably it will stay the same because you took a really big model with a lot of parameters. And then when you fine tune your existing one, you have to figure out what's happening there. And say for fine-tune example, but see, it's a bit way that these examples apply also for RAG. Why not? Except for maybe a very specific, say, medical diagnostics or code generation. Okay, code generation, it's not critical. Basically, you can get any model to understand your code base, depends what you want. Say, in medical context, you can load a lot of case studies, documents, protocols, etc. model, and then your model might become available. Actually, companies are chasing for the fine-tuned versions of certain domain-specific models. And for example, V0 that we're using, it's a model for coding the mostly front-end applications. It does some back-end too. And it seems that it was trained with Shazi and it was trained with Next and with certain libraries, and the results speaks for themselves. The results are really good and efficient. However, definitely then spend some time. Criteria and aspects to consider when you pick one or other path in retrieval augmented generation. You make use of you integrate the knowledge in a different way, and the update speed you need to retrain, but to add the knowledge into vector storage is so much simpler. Computation is slower and faster with RAG. Then for fine-tuning, you need a lot of GPU, a lot of VRAM, and then there is traceability. With the RAG, you get some traceability, how it went, what it found, which vectors, which texts and documents it used. You get lost, and then you're able to judge only by the user scene. However, I would be opting for RAG, and we do opt for RAG because we're not chasing after, say, very deep domain-specific knowledge, and we want to avoid the R&D complexity with a lot of GPUs. However, we can pursue that, and we have. So for our case, we apply RAG. We're currently working on the pipeline to embed it. And for other cases, it depends, although it's a bit generic. That's it in a nutshell. This was a comparison. We can actually co-create the setup for LLM where we would be doing either RAG or fine-tuning together. And then every partner, every organization can apply that in their own context. Let me know what you think.